Welcome to the Bakersfield City Council meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m., Sunday at 10 a.m., and the following Wednesday at 7 p.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, the Honorable Mayor Karen K. Go.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order the City Council meeting of May 8th, 2019. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Go.
Here.
Vice Mayor Parlier.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Smith.
I'm here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here. Thank you. We have the privilege tonight of having Pastor Marisa Banks from Compassion Christian Center lead us in the invocation. We're so grateful for Compassion Christian Center, very involved in education, and they have a preschool and summer and after school programs for those who are underserved, and it's always a pleasure to work together with your church. And then following the invocation, we have some very, very special guests here to lead us in the pledge. And we have the Foothill basketball team. That is the state champion. The state champions. The first boys basketball state title for Kern County in 25 years. So under the leadership of Coach Wes Davis, Division 5 state champions played in the Golden One Center in Sacramento against Mount Shasta. Foothill, 78, Mount Shasta, 66. And this is the second title for the team since 1988, but the first in 25 years. So it's a joy to have you here. Pastor Marisa, would you come now? Please stand.
What a great night to be here with all of these Trojans behind me, although I am a rebel and my children are drillers. We are excited about this state championship in the last 25 years. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for the city of Bakersfield and all of its residents. We thank you for the city council as they endeavor to govern wisely, strategically, and fairly. We pray for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding in both the simple and complex matters, so that Bakersfield is a model city that thrives. Today, we call an abundance of diverse industry to our city, and we declare Bakersfield is safe, attractive, and prosperous. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Gentlemen?
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and you may be seated with the exception of the Trojans, and I'd like you to remain standing, and I'm going to come down there.
Congratulations once again to the Foothill High School basketball team, led by Coach Wes Davis, assistant coach Wade Tavron, and the team consists of Edward Hurd, Brian Diaz, Elijah Seals, Warren Stingley, Sean Davis, Ricardo Torres, Jaden Phillips, Bryce Schaefer, Edward Turner, Kevin Burns, and Gabriel Bossy.
Well, congratulations, gentlemen. You don't do this every day, and we're really proud of you. And you get the first mayor's medals. These just arrived, especially for you. Now for you, I'm going to have to grow a little. Now, whether I can even reach you.
That's the reason they're state champions.
Yes. I never got invited to be on the basketball. Wade DeVorn. Whoops, sorry. Thank you. Let's give it up to the Trojans. Come on up here. And put your nose around in case they got put the wrong way. Let's see, you want to stand in the back row?
Naya, just squish us a little bit.
Maybe 2 rows. Can we do that?
That's good. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Another. 1, 2, 3. One more. And good. Thank you.
Give it up for the Trojans. We're proud of you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll see you. Thank you. Do you want to say anything? You sure? Come on. A few words from the coach.
Well, we thank the city of Bakersfield supporting us, giving us the opportunity. We're definitely humble. Couldn't have done this without, first of all, God giving us the athletic ability and blessing me with great young men, which will be professionals within your communities here shortly. So when you guys see them come through, hire them, support them. Most of these guys will be going to college, some to trade school, as well as some to serve our country. But once again, we just appreciate our city. We're thankful that we made our city proud. And we appreciate you guys again allowing us to come back and be acknowledged. So thank you again.
Thank you, Coach. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Under presentations, item A, we have a proclamation to David Graham, Commander, and Deanne Graham, President of the American Legion Auxiliary, Bakersfield Post 26, declaring National Poppy Day on May 25th, 2019.
Do you want to bring the rest of your team up? Come on. Thanks so much for being here. In Flanders Field, the poppies blow between the crosses row by row. And you probably remember that from school. And, I kind of think when we're in school, we just say those words. But people gave their lives so that we could have freedom. And it's such an honor today to have our commander here and for me to present the following proclamation. The mayor of the city of Bakersfield, California, has officially proclaimed May 2019 as Poppy Month in our city in recognition of the commitment of the American Legion Auxiliary to distributing memorial poppies in order to refresh the consciousness of the American people regarding the price of freedom. In recognition of the significance of the crimson poppy, symbolic of the American blood spilled, defending freedom from the forces of tyranny in Flanders battlefields in World War I, and a sign of hope and peace and restoration for a world weary of war, and in recognition of our veterans as well as the families of veterans assisted by the proceeds generated by the contributions for poppies. It's signed Karen Go, Mayor of the City of Bakersfield. Thank you so much for all of your support of our veterans. Thank you, and come and say a few words.
Thank you. I just want to say that all the donations we receive go back to our veterans. The poppies are handmade by our veterans in the hospitals in our California system. So wear them proudly, we do, and thank you again.
Let's take a picture.
Let's take a picture, Jeff. You want to take a quick group one right here? Sure. Jeff.
Oh, okay.
Before she starts crying.
Before you start crying?
I just want to say our juniors made my head.
The juniors made the beautiful headdress.
Yes, at conference a couple weeks ago.
Very lovely. Thank you very much. And somebody's done this 19 times up here. We again get to award we got the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. Mr. Chris Hewitt, representing the city of Bakersfield. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
You can talk about it.
All right. Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. This award recognizes the city once again 19 years in a row for putting together a budget document that conforms to some very strict specifications and guidelines as put forth by the Government Finance Officers Association. A small portion of cities within the state of California receive this award every year. And I would like to note that it is not merely submittal of the document in which you receive the award. There are 27 different categories, I believe, that you must meet. There are 3 independent reviewers that look at the document and determine whether or not it meets those criteria. So again, we're pleased to ensure that our document complies with the GFOA specifications and criteria, and look forward to continuing that this next year with the document that we'll be developing over the next several months. That'll become the budget document for July 1, 2019. So with that, I just want to thank the mayor for this recognition and really thank the staff and our budget team and everybody behind me that helps out with this document. It's a team effort. Especially like to recognize Finance Director Nelson Smith, who has helped me over the last 8 years with this document and with the budget in general. And also recognize Administrative Analyst Brianna Carrier. She puts the document together and does all the technical work, and that's not fun, but she, I think, enjoys it. So thank you very much.
Congratulations. Before we receive public statements, I'd like to call on Mr. Tandy for a few words.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, I would say we're losing a valued employee of 11 and a half years, but he's actually going to work for our partner agency, Kern Delta Water District. Steve Telia has, I recruited him from the Chamber of Commerce, where I saw him perform as the staff to the GRC. He was promoted 3 times, I believe, to the position of Assistant City Manager and has served the city of Bakersfield well. We wish Steve well as he moves on to our partner agency, and we will see him around in that role. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Telia. We really appreciate it. Mr. Telia has helped me as I've gone up to Sacramento on a number of times to represent our city, and thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate it. At this time, we'll receive public statements. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per topic. If you have written comments that are longer than your statements, please give those to the clerk, and she will give copies to the council. We're very interested and concerned with your issues. Due to the public notice requirement of the Brown Act, council can't take action when an item isn't on the agenda. The council can, however, refer your matter to committee or request that staff contact you. If you're here for hearing item 10A, now isn't the time to speak. You'll be given an opportunity later when we call on that. So at this point, Madam City Attorney, first public speaker, please. I'm City Clerk, sorry. I was going to give you a new job there, City Attorney. City Clerk, please.
Madam Mayor, we have received 6 speaker cards this evening, 2 cards on recycling centers and 4 cards on separate subjects. Our first public speaker is Stephen Lambert regarding land dedication.
Good afternoon. I assume you have my correct spelling. I'm very excited to be here because of an opportunity. Someone has donated approximately 8 acres to the inner city community located in Ward 1 to be used for a campground for the Scouts of Kern County. And we wanted the City Council to know because we feel that it is a splendid opportunity to demonstrate that there are people and there are members of the community that may not reside within the inner city and some of the underserved places, but people are still concerned and interested in helping someone do something that's going to help our youth and help our future. There will be a scholarship called the Jesse Bradford Scholarship, and that will go along with many of the African-American individuals who started at the proverbial bottom, but achieved something and then came back into their community and helped others who may not know that there are people that care, and if you're willing to put forth the effort, you'll find someone that's willing to support you to become better citizens and better individuals who will actually help the economy. It's going to be called Black Wall Street Square. And our request is for letters of support, because what we will call Black History name signs will be placed on this property, and wherever the scouts reside, each designated lot will actually have the name of African American person who has achieved a lot and came from the proverbial bottom and is willing to give back. So we will be returning, because we're positive that you're going to like all the plans for this particular property. It is located on Lotus Lane between the streets of Casa Grande, Hacienda, and Casino. And it's very near the Friendship House. And we're certain that the Friendship House is going to be excited that there's going to be some things going on, and we are including a future Black Wall Street farmers market. So we just wanted to let you all know, because we're certain that there's going to be a lot of support for this endeavor to help our youth and to demonstrate that there are people that really, really care.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Next speaker, please.
Ray Scott, representing Keep California Beautiful.
Welcome, Mr. Scott.
Good evening, Mayor Goh, City Council, staff. It's always a pleasure and privilege to be able to talk about what I like to talk about, the depth of Bakersfield. As the president of the board for Keep California Beautiful, I've created a new award given out each year to the top male and female for Keep California Beautiful. And it's after our Mayor Harvey Hall's call to action, be the change. And of course, this year, some of the people that helped me get to the position I'm in now was, of course, Mayor Hall and John Enriquez. Instead of going through his lengthy recognition, because John has done so much for this city, so much for Keep California Beautiful, it was just a privilege to be able to give this award to him, while once again, we were doing a project of beautification for the Garces Circle on April the 13th. John and I have been working with the Rotary of Bakersfield doing a number of beautification projects. And so I thought it was very fitting to bestow this honor on him while we were doing a beautification project for Bakersfield. And John is just a great example of talking about the depth of Bakersfield. His heart is for Bakersfield. And I'd like to commend, once again, the Solid Waste Division, because Kevin Barnes has always been very resourceful, bringing wood chips out so we can lay mulch throughout downtown Chester and over the entire Garces Circle in the gardens that they have. Drastic difference in appearance while taking an item that is being cultivated here at our own solid waste green yard. And so it's just, once again, a privilege to be a part of Bakersfield, and I just thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott, and we just thank Mr. Enriquez. He is out there every Saturday with the team helping keep Bakersfield beautiful. Next speaker, please.
Mayor Go, the next two speakers are speaking regarding the subject of recycling centers. The first speaker is Devin Johnson.
Yes, good afternoon.
Welcome.
My name is Devon Johnson. I'm owner-operator of Johnson Recycling Center located at 1007 Brundage Lane. And recently, my center and other curbside recycling centers, such as myself, specifically those in Ward 1, have been getting cited by the city code enforcement based on some municipal code zoning violations that, first of all, we were never told about when we were getting our businesses, but nonetheless, we were being cited. And so we decided to go have a hearing and meet with the planning commission just to see if we can rectify the situation and what's going on, only to be told that, you know, we can file for a conditional use permit for $2,531, non-refundable, but it only lasts a 2-month consideration time, but eventually it's going to be denied anyway. So basically, you know, they were just going to, it was no sense of filing a conditional use permit when it was still going to be denied. And when we asked for an explanation on why our CPU is going to be denied, they said, well, they were basically mandated by this board here to go out and close down curbside recycling centers that are not located in state-certified convenience zones. Now, that may not be such a problem in the other wards, such as 5, 4, and 7, but I know in Ward 1, first of all, through all the years of the gerrymandering and the redlining and the disenfranchisement, we don't have too many convenience zones over there to build our businesses on, okay? So that's one situation. On top of that, to be declared a public nuisance when there hasn't been any kind of any complaints against our business, I don't see how you guys are going to enforce this discretionary code on us when, like I say, it's a discretionary code. When somebody say discretionary, us in Ward 1, we call it discriminatory. All right, we are small business people. We can't afford to have $2,531 taken from our pocket for nothing. And already being told it's not going to be considered. It's just to buy you more time. You know, we need representation. I tried to contact my city councilman. I emailed him, I made a phone call, nothing's been returned. So I'm trying to figure out who's representing us in Ward 1. Where's our representation? Why did y'all decide to do this against recycling centers? What was the complaint? Why did nobody contact us? You know, now I know I can't get y'all to make a move on it today, but can this be considered to committee? Can we readdress this? Can you get some of the business owners who are struggling to provide a service to the community a chance to have a voice? To be hit with all these fines and pushed out of business, we can't afford that. So instead of going and paying money we didn't have, and I'm speaking on behalf of other recycling centers who will be here, but we're trying to get an opportunity to have some communication. So instead of spending this money, I was already told you guys are making a decision on this. This is a discretionary code that you guys told the planning commission to enforce. So can y'all put it to committee, contact some of the business that y'all already circled out and designated that y'all going to attack, and let's come to the meeting so we can rectify this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We'll make sure that we communicate your message to Councilmember Rivera also. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Walter Johnson.
That's my boy. My boy.
Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Here. I was born in Bakersfield, California in 1947. I was drafted from Bakersfield, California to serve in Vietnam. Okay, I'm a veteran that has been wounded in action, combat veteran. My son, he asked me, you know, one time, to let him have some money one time to try to do something in his life. And I gave him some money. And now this is considered, and we are considered a nuisance. We have always, the Johnson family has always been a member of substantiation in this Bakersfield. And, you know, where's our accomplishment from that? I know, I left 50 years ago, and I came back. In 50 years, the same thing is still going on. That's the reason I left out of here. But you know, that's cool. But hey, I'm not running anymore. I come home to die. So, you know, they're gonna plant me up there in that Arvin, wherever they're gonna do. But hey, my family's name is still the Johnson Family Recycling Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for your service. Next speaker, please.
Don Aldeker from the Bakersfield Toy Run.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Go, members of the City Council. I am the president of the Bakersfield Toy Run, which is an event that takes place on the second Sunday of December every year. I'm also a lawyer. Notwithstanding that impediment, I'm going to keep to your 3 minutes. 37 years ago, a group of Bakersfield motorcyclists were coming back from Los Angeles where they had attended a Christmas toy run. They stopped in Fraser Park for a cup of coffee to shake off the cold before proceeding home. They wondered out loud why Bakersfield couldn't have an event like the one they had just attended. So the following year, 24 motorcycles collected 75 toys and a few cans of food and donated it to the Salvation Army, which was the only charity that was interested in receiving anything from that group of people. 35 years later, the event has grown. We now bring around 6,000 motorcycles from up to 5 different states on the second Sunday of December each year. People gather in Beach Park, and they travel from Beach Park to the Kern County Fairground, where they donate thousands of toys and thousands of pounds of food that assist up to 900 families, needy families in Bakersfield and the Kern County area that would not otherwise be able to provide Christmas for their children. None of that would happen if it wasn't for the assistance of the city and the Bakersfield Police Department. We have a committee that meets monthly and organizes the event, but we recognize that it is not possible to move 6,000 motorcycles through the city without the assistance of the police department to shut down intersections and make that happen. So we are here today after 35 years of that assistance to recognize both the city and the Bakersfield Police Department for the assistance that they give us, and to thank you for what you do, and to assure you that we will continue to do this as long as we possibly can. I have 2 plaques that I would like to give, one to the mayor and one to a member of the Bakersfield Police Department.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all it is that you're doing, making a difference in 900 families.
To whom should I give the plaque for the city?
To our city clerk. Thank you very much. And officers, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Madam Clerk, next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Hayden West regarding public parks, specifically MLK Park.
Welcome, Mr. West.
Hello. Hello, council members and Mayor Gaw. I'm here to speak about Martin Luther King Park, which I feel like it's been overseen. I feel like maybe more surveillance will help this park. I have been coming to this park as a child myself. I grew up in Bakersfield, Vernon Carn Medical Center, KMC. Sorry. And I think surveillance would really help the park. I have taken my little siblings, and Martin Luther King had a dream. And my dream is to be able to take my little siblings to that park again. And I feel like it's a neighborhood safety concern because there are syringes thrown on the ground by the playground and condoms thrown on the ground, sorry. And I really would like to see like a change. I have to go probably 15 minutes away when that park is 5 minutes away from my house to take my little siblings to a better park where there's more safety there. So I would like probably more surveillance, I feel like would help the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. West, and we appreciate having you as a student speak and attend here. And I know we have a student from CSUV. Go Gates and go Roadrunners. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an item. I'd like to move new business and take it now, so I make a motion that we move that item.
You have a motion? Please cast your votes. Still getting used to our technology. You know how it always works when it works?
Motion is approved with Councilmember Rivera and Weir absent.
Thank you. So would you please announce this item?
Under new business, we have Centennial Corridor Mainline Project. Item number 1, accept the bid and award the contract with Security Paving Construction to construct said project. Number 2, construction management agreement with AECOM for construction management services. Number 3, amendment number 8 to agreement 14-288 with Parsons Transportation Group for support services during construction. And number 4, appropriate funds, federal earmark funds, and appropriate various local funds, road fund balances to the Public Works Capital Improvement Budget in the respective funds for the Centennial Corridor Mainline Project.
Thank you. Mr. Fiddler.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, tonight I will be providing an update to the TRIP program, more specifically the Centennial Corridor. However, first I have the pleasure of introducing former Congressman William Thomas, the founder of the TRIP program. And at this time, he'd like to make a little bit of statements. Thanks.
Thank you. Welcome.
Nice to be back.
Welcome back, and we appreciate your ongoing love for our community and your investment.
Well, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, it's always a pleasure to see a group of people, this time young men, who were in competition. And the competition was basketball. And every one of the other teams that played on a court that was the same size, the basket was at the same height, and they beat everyone on that same field. I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the fact that not everybody gets to play on a standard field. I remember the movie in 1989, Kevin Costner, Field of Dreams. Some of you may remember that. He was a corn farmer in Iowa, and he kept hearing a voice that said, "If you build it, he will come." The gist of it was long dead baseball players gathered near that cornfield. And so he decided he was going to build a stadium. And he did. And the end of the movie pans out from the little stadium, and all the highways around it show the headlights of all of the people coming to that baseball field. If you build it, they will come. For almost 50 years, I watched Bakersfield grow. And we had dreams of roads. Every time there was a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, we would talk about the roads we not only would like to have, but frankly, we thought we deserved. The problem was the system was rigged. For example, federal money was distributed to state agencies in every state, in which the state legislatures would determine where the money would go to build highways in that state. Kern County had the misfortune of being east-west county in a north-south state. And we did get federal money for highways, but it was to allow the populations in the north and the south to go through us, not for us. And so I came to the realization that if we stayed in that arena playing that game, it was fundamentally unfair. And so I thought we might be able to change the system. During the last term that I knew I was going to serve in Congress, we had a national highway bill. We were lucky enough to have the chairman of the House committee be the chair of the conference committee. His name was Don Young of Alaska. He was actually born in California. And so we sat down and began talking to various people in the county. What would be our dreams for roads if we were going to be able to build them? And I know in almost 50 years, the only really decent federal money we got was to build a freeway for State Highway 58 coming into Bakersfield from the east and the west in our east-west county. The only problem was, outside of Bakersfield, it was a 3-lane freeway. As it got closer to Bakersfield, it turned into a 2-lane freeway, and then it dead-ended into 99. Well, actually, it dead-ended into Real Road and the Wild West Shopping Center, which received cars and trucks periodically. And that was what we got out of the game that we were playing. So we talked about how much we would need and what we could do, and fortunately, I was the chairman of Ways and Means Committee at the time, and I controlled the amount of money that came into that highway bill. And so I talked to my colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, and explained to them how there was nothing in the center of a north-south state to get people from interstate highways and state highways from east to west. And could we please put together a pot of money which would allow us to do that? And then I asked them to take one more step. Change the game. Don't send it to Sacramento. If that money went there, once again, we would not have a chance for the money that we thought we deserved after almost 50 years. So I said we're going to create an entity in this area, and we're going to ask the local governments to participate, the city, the county, the Kern Council of Governments, and since we were contemplating freeways, we had to involve Caltrans. But we only wanted to involve Region 6 of Caltrans. Malcolm Doherty was the director of Region 6 when we began, and he was sympathetic to what we wanted to do, but then a miracle occurred. And succeeding Malcolm Doherty as the head of Region 6 was Sherry Bender Ellert, who was born in Bakersfield, went to Highland High School, and knew what we needed. And so we began playing the game by our rules. All 50 states got their money in the old-fashioned way, including California, except for an amount which was in total about $750 million for the Roads of Dreams that we had was about $630 million that came from the federal government. And that was what we were going to do. One time only in the history, 2 sources got money in one state. So we sat down and began working out how we were going to do this. And you heard Nick talk about And someone was kind enough, I believe it was someone in the Parsons structure, which oversaw what we were doing, that decided to come up with a clever acronym, TRIP, and I'm the T in TRIP, which was nice. But what we began doing was laying out what we needed to do. And of course, the first thing you came to was, as the city of Bakersfield was growing, ultimately now to the 9th largest city in the state. By the time we cut the ribbon on this last section, we're going to probably be 8th largest city in the state. What can we bring to the pot? And the city of Bakersfield, as one of the leads, because we couldn't have Caltrans because it'd be directed by Sacramento, they were going to talk about going into debt somewhere in the neighborhood of $250, $270 million to match money coming in. And the county said, we're going to initially put in $40 million. And KernCog said, we'll do whatever we can do with money coming from the state for various functions to pool together in this TRIP program. I want to mention 3 people that have been absolutely instrumental in making this work. First of all, Alan Tandy, taking on the responsibility of the city of Bakersfield, putting a pot of money in with the support of the council and with some discussion about, I mean, we always had a dream for roads, but are we actually going to get them? Aaron Hakimi, who was a engineer for Caltrans, Region 6, but he came to Bakersfield in the 90s. He began cooperatively from the beginning, working with the Caltrans portion, but then became head of the Kern Council of Governments. He just recently retired as a full colonel in the Army, in the engineering area, and he has been an enormous resource for figuring out the mechanics of how things work. And my contribution was basically to schmooze people and get as much additional money as we could get. And the reason I'm standing up here tonight is that our first groundbreaking was in 2007. It was the Fairfax Highway. Our first ribbon cutting was on the West Side Parkway. In June, we're going to have our 20th groundbreaking, the project that you're going to listen to and hopefully support. And we're going to have our last ribbon cutting probably in 2022, and I personally invite all of you to be there because I plan to be there. And we're going to cut the ribbon on the main line connector for the Centennial Corridor, all the bridges, all the underpasses, taking 58 and reaching the West Side Parkway and becoming State Highway 58, crossing the 9th, soon to be 8th largest city in California without a stop sign or a stoplight. And that's the thing that I want all of us to celebrate, because we have undertaken a task which up to date has spent literally $1 billion, $972 million, and we'll wind up spending somewhere near $1.4 million, I'm sorry, that's the Ways and Means numbers with those 3 extra zeros. And the city of Bakersfield, with its promise of the $270 million to help build our roads, best bet he ever made. $0 necessary from the city in completing our structure, because we built it and they came. Money that couldn't be used elsewhere because we were shovel ready. Supporters at Caltrans because a native daughter ran it. Commitment from staff in what's usually a war field between jurisdictions, coming together to create a highway system that I bet almost all of us who've been here 50 years thought we would never see. And so I just wanted to come and say thank you. And we're going to have a 20th groundbreaking. I believe we're firming up on June 12, 9:30 early, since it's warm. And then I invite you, I don't have the date yet, to come to the ribbon cutting, creating that construction for people to travel east-west in an east-west county in a north-south state. Thanks.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you very much. We appreciate your leadership and your advocacy. Mr. Fiddler?
Mayor Go, if I may interrupt, before Mr. Fiddler starts his presentation, I would like to announce a staff memorandum was received regarding this item, transmitting a clarification on staff's response to Granite Construction's bid protest.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas was very modest. I mean, even till today, I've traveled up and down the state with Mr. Thomas trying to acquire additional monies to limit that borrow from down to zero. So he has been very active in this process of the TRIP program, and he has been very instrumental in making sure it happened, working with both the city, the county, KernCog, and Caltrans. So I really do appreciate all that he's done for the city and the county and Caltrans. As you're aware, as Mr. Thomas has stated, the Thomas Roads Improvement Program, commonly known as TRIP, is combined of 4 different agencies: the City of Bakersfield, the County of Kern, KernCog, or Kern Council of Governments, and Caltrans, the City of Bakersfield being the lead agency. We also have a program manager that's contracted through the city. Parsons Transportation Group is providing the program management. The initial project, or the initial funding for this program, as Mr. Thomas has indicated, was $630 million, which Mr. Thomas secured in a federal earmark. So right on this slide, you're looking at approximately $500 million worth of projects that have been completed over the years of the course of the TRIP program. They're ranging all the way from 7th Standard Road down to the Beltway Operational Improvements Projects, which is one that's just currently wrapping up construction or completing construction. Projects that are under construction right now are totaling just under $154 million. There are 5 projects on that list, and unfortunately, I'm sorry to say we're impacting all of your routes home tonight, because each one of these projects will impact your way unless you live in the downtown core. So the first one being the Kern River Bridges, the Centennial Phase 1, that is security paving, and that was at $41 million. The Bell Terrace Operational Improvements Project, this is Phase 2 of the Centennial Corridor, was Granite Construction at $32 million. The Bakersfield Freeway Connector, which is just kicking off, is Phase 3, is a security paving at $48.5 million. The West Park Local Streets and Walls, that one's pretty much wrapped up. We're just doing punch list items, and that is Cal Prime at $4.2 million. And the 24th Street improvements, which is in the downtown core, so hopefully you don't have to go north of 24th Street to get home. Otherwise, you are landlocked everywhere. So, and that one is at $28 million. The Centennial Corridor project, this is the largest project of the whole TRIP program. This is about approximately 1.5 mile freeway connector that will connect State Route 58 to the east to the West Side Parkway at Truxton Avenue to the west. The environmental document clearance took about 8 years to complete, from 2007 to 2015. We acquired over 200 residential and 30 commercial properties for the project, and the cost to acquire these properties were approximately $140 million. The project has been split into 4 different phases to advance construction on the Phase 1 and to seek funding opportunities, which I will share how we were very successful in that procedure later on in this presentation. So the Centennial obtained the following additional funding for the construction of the following projects. And again, this is where Mr. Thomas was very instrumental with the city staff and Kern Council of Governments in putting out these requests or applications for additional funding. The first one is $25 million from the new Senate Bill number 1 under the Trades Corridor Enhancement Program. This is for the what we call the Bakersfield Freeway Connector. This is for westbound State Route 58 to the new loop ramp that will be constructed to go southbound on 99. It includes some auxiliary lanes and the new loop ramp. Then we received $50 million from INFRA. This is from federal money. This is a nationwide grant opportunity, which we were successful in. I believe we received one of the largest grants out of that application process. And then $63 million from the STIP program, which is state, local, state share, and that goes to the mainline corridor. $31 million from the SHOP program, which is state funding, that is being utilized on the Bell Terrace Bridge project. And all in total, we received $169 million in probably the last year and a half. That was what helped us bring down that initial borrow of $270,000, or $270 million to zero. Yeah, I tell you. So we were able to reduce that borrow and matching that with our local funds that we've generated through the program. So this is a snapshot of the Centennial Corridor construction in the various phases that are shown in the different colors. Starting off on the left-hand side, the Kern River Bridge improvements, which is phase 1 that's currently under construction. Those are the major bridges that you see being built over the Kern River. Phase 2 is on the right-hand side of the page, and that is the Bell Terrace Bridge. You can see in the recent months we've dropped the existing Bell Terrace Bridge over 99 to make way for a new bridge in order to increase the clearance of the vertical clearance of the bridge structure and to widen underneath the bridge to accommodate additional lanes on State Route 99. And then phase 3 is the Bakersfield Freeway Connector. That is the loop ramp that I discussed previously for westbound to southbound movements. And now tonight we are seeking approval for the main line and interchange improvements, which we're calling phase 4. So the first phase, Centennial Corridor Phase 1, the Kern River Bridge Improvements Project, this was awarded to Security Paving at a total of $41 million. Construction started in August 2017, and it's a 24-month construction project, and its expected completion date is in September of 2019, later this year. So showing, highlighted on the map there where phase 1 is. These are rendering of the ultimate configuration for that facility. You can see the elevated bridge that's going off to the north side of the screen. That is the new off-ramp from the westbound Centennial Corridor to the Mohawk off-ramp. And then the bridges are being completed right now for the main line structure of that interchange.
Let's put some water in that picture next time.
Hey, right now there is a lot of water. So again, these are photos of during construction. I really need to update these because they're really progressing nicely on that project. Again, additional photos of them placing concrete on the bridge decks. And if you look to the left-hand side of this photo, you could see the Truxton Avenue bridge crossing in its initial phases of construction and setting false work. Just this weekend, we pulled the false work off for that bridge. So you can actually, now that bridge is completed, they will be doing the surface treatments such as bridge railings and tying into the mainline structure. So it is moving fast. Moving into phase 2, up in the right-hand corner, the Bell Terrace project. Bell Terrace Operational Improvements Project shown in blue here. These are all the blue improvements are what's proposed or being constructed at this moment. This project was awarded to Granite Construction at $32 million. It's started construction in October 2018. It is an 18-month construction project and is expected to be complete on April 2020. And then moving into phase 3. This is the Bakersfield Freeway connector, all the improvements shown in red and also the improvements shown in blue. The blues are actually structures. The red is more of main line and concrete pavement. You can see it stretches all the way down to Ming Avenue to the right. The improvements will create some auxiliary lanes and weaving and merging lanes to accommodate traffic between State Route 58 and Ming Avenue, because it gets very congested in that area. It'll separate out those movements, so people that are wanting to get off at Ming Avenue will be separated from traffic that's wanting to enter into the main line on State Route 99 southbound. The green dashed lines will show where the main line will connect into the Bakersfield Freeway connector. You can see that this line here represents a dedicated lane that will go from the Centennial Corridor southbound directly into Ming Avenue, again keeping that traffic outside of the main line. And then the second green line that just popped up will be the connector bridge that will tie the traffic for eastbound Centennial into southbound State Route 99. And then the last being the connection to State Route 58 directly. This project was awarded to, Phase 3 was awarded to Security Paving at $48.5 million. Construction started in February. It's a 30-month construction project, and it's expected to be complete in August of 2021. Now the final piece that will connect the State Route 58 to the West Side Parkway, ultimately extending State Route 58 through the metropolitan area and adding, completing a 9.5-mile new freeway. If you can take the 8 miles for the West Side Parkway and the 1.5 miles for the new Centennial Corridor. So this is a rendering of what it will look like in full. So the Centennial Corridor Phase 4 mainline connector, low bid with Security Paving at $147 million. Construction anticipated to start in June of 2019. This is a 36-month construction project and is expected to be complete in August 2022. And please join me and Bill for that ribbon cutting ceremony. This is a rendering of what that facility will look like. And thank you. And at this time, staff is recommending approval of this item, 13A, accepting of low bid, approval of construction contract, approval of construction management agreement, approval of amendment, and appropriation.
Thank you, Mr. Fiddler. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Great work, great projects plural. Thank you, Congressman Thomas. It's continuing work as we go, and the city, in my mind, has already benefited greatly from the projects that we've completed. I believe much of the revitalization of downtown is due to our better transportation system from both east and west, making it much easier for people to get downtown, and so it obviously is helping our economy and will continue to. So thank you for the work.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, Congressman, this community owes you a debt of gratitude that I don't think we're ever going to be able to repay. Your legacy is going to go way into the future with these freeways, and I want to thank your able partner, Alan Tandy. Without his tenacity to see this project through with the city, and there's still misinformation out there that we're on the hook for some money. And again, we owe how much, Nick?
Zero at this point.
Zero. Again, thank you so much to the city manager and Nick and everyone else involved on the city side for that, Kern Cog, and of course you again, Congressman. Thank you so much. And with that, if there's, you gonna say something, Jackie?
Welcome, Bill. It's always a treat. We're honored to have you visit our meeting.
And I'm just remembering the story that you told after the airport was named after you, and you had your 2 grandsons in the back seat of your car, and the one that wasn't Bill Thomas Jr. said, "Now when is something going to be named after me?" Thinking that it had been named after his brother. So that is a darling story, and you told it much better than I did. But, and how perfect that your name is Thomas, so we could come up with the perfect acronym of the TRIP project. That's very convenient. But yes, we are just so blessed and so fortunate. And the timing was perfect. It was just meant to be, Bill. You'd spent many, many years in serving the state of California, and then, of course, our federal government. And it was meant to be. You had earned it, and we were the benefactors and the recipients of what you were able to work out. So, yes, quite a legacy. So thanks for being here. It's always a delight to see you. You go back many years with many of us. So anyway, great. And Nick, it is just so interesting, me living off of Ming Avenue, where I do, and going into town, to see the way that the overpass or the bridge is being built over Bell Terrace. Just the way it's developing. And I have to say, as difficult, as inconvenient as it can be when our route is a little bit delayed, it is amazing how you are working out the minimum of congestion that you are. What is more busy? 99, 24th Street, California Avenue, all that is being worked on at one time. And it really does amaze me, So good planning, good workmanship, good cooperation. So you're doing a great job, and we are all the ones that will benefit. And Alan, you're the kind of one of the heads of the team, along with Bill, and so it's working real well, and we will all benefit for many years to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. Congressman, I also want to thank you for the Hosking interchange. If it wasn't for TRIP, that wouldn't have happened either, and at some point we're going to have a beautiful shopping center out there. And if nobody else has any other comments, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the low bid, approval of the construction contract, approval of construction management agreement, approval of the amendment and appropriation, along with the corresponding memorandum on this item mentioned by the city clerk.
Thank you. You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Rivera and Weir absent.
Thank you so much, Congressman, Mr. Tandy, Mr. Fiddler, and Team Kern-Cog. We very much appreciate all that you've done for us. Next item, please.
Under workshops, we have the fiscal year 2019-2020 proposed budget overview.
Mr. Tandy.
Honorable Mayor and City Council, this is a pretty good night for city government in Bakersfield. We just had that event, which began in 2005 and intensified in 2007. And about 2 years after that intensified, the recession hit. And ever since then, my obligation under the city charter is to present a draft budget to the City Council. And I've been doing so along with the statements that it's minimal, it's small, we're trying to do the best we can without much. In those areas where we could get grants like TRIP, we did well. In enterprise funds, we did well. But city services have become more and more constrained over that period of time until council leadership resulted in an item being placed on the ballot, and an overwhelming majority of 97 out of 92,000 votes prevailed, and the Public Safety and Vital Services measure was passed. So I'm very pleased tonight to be able to say this is a very progressive, very meaningful, impactful budget that we're presenting you. This is going to significantly enhance police and public safety services in town. It's going to significantly impact the homelessness issue. It's going to significantly impact the fire department. It is going to allow us to restore an economic development advocacy component to the city workforce. It's going to improve our parks and landscaping, quality of life issues, and some of our regional parks, which are major attractions and serve both the local needs as well as bringing in regional, statewide, and West Coast events. The city agreed to create a Citizens Oversight Committee as a part of the ballot measure. And our budget efforts, I would say, this year were almost doubled, the workload involved, because we had to prepare. We got the pleasure of preparing a full presentation for that committee. They listened to us for about 12 hours in 4 different sessions. And at the end of all that, they voted to approve that the items presented to them were in accordance with the ballot issues and about 93% of the recommended staff recommendations. The budget you are going to be presented tonight contains all of the staff recommendations, and along with the good luck that I've been referencing, I have almost more good luck to announce. I can't quite say it's positive yet, but we applied for a $3 million matching grant. We provide $3 million, the state provides $3 million for phase 3 of the Kaiser Permanente Sports Village. And that grant application has been progressing through the system, and I am beyond cautiously optimistic. I'm quite optimistic that we're going to have good news for you within the next week or two about that. The intensified workload of the kind of dual budget processes has largely been in the hands of Assistant City Manager Chris Hewitt and a team that he will refer to later of staff employees who assisted him. The quality of the product, I think, from the awards you've seen is good. We are going to break this presentation down by 3 different speakers so you don't get too bored with our monotones. And Chris is going to lead off.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, Chris Hewitt, City Manager's Office. I will get through the first part here, and then we'll turn it back over to Mr. Tandy, I believe, and Mr. Smith will be up here in just a moment as well. So as we talked about just a moment ago, this budget before you is historic in our eyes in terms of service level enhancements, programs, projects that address those top community priorities. Those community priorities include public safety, homelessness, economic development, community facilities, fiscal stability. Not listed there are things like quality of life programs and services that are going to be enhanced through this package that is before you this evening. Some positive factors, as we all know, the passage of the Public Safety and Vital Services measure is key and top in this budget package. The health of the local economy is another bright factor in this budget that I'll get into in just a minute. The reallocation of local roads funds, which builds upon the last presentation that you have, essentially more of our local funding sources that are designated to roads projects are being shifted away from TRIP projects because of the timing and also because of the success of the TRIP staff in obtaining outside funding. And so these additional road funding sources are going to go towards local streets, pedestrian and bicycle enhancements. It's not without challenges, and we don't want to minimize challenges that are before us. CalPERS continues to be a thorn in the side of not just the city of Bakersfield, but many jurisdictions throughout the state of California. There is a proposal contained within this budget that you have already seen that would reduce the payment to PERS next year by about $800,000, and I'll get into the details in just a moment. We're also subject to minimum wage increases that are mandated by the state of California, moving to $15 an hour here in a few years. So we're progressively stepping through that each and every year, and that continues to impact several of our full-time positions, and so that's included in this budget. And then there's the overall increased demand for service, and I'm sure it's not lost on all of you about the increased demands that you are all seeing throughout various areas of the city and throughout various departments and services the city provides. That's certainly not lost on staff and what we talk about and plan for each and every day. A little bit of good news, oil prices, as you probably know, have remained pretty steady over the last year or so or longer. There have been some dips and increases, and overall, though, pretty healthy. We've seen some modest job growth in the oil sector in the last 12 months. That's a little bit different than what we saw several years ago, where we saw 5,000 or so jobs leave the region or be cut due to the downturn. Sales tax and property tax, general fund revenues that are significant in the city's budget process have shown consistent growth over the last several years, again, which is something a little bit different than we've seen in past budget cycles. Development remains stable, and again, as of May 1st, we got the new population numbers for the city of Bakersfield, and we're showing once again a population increase up to 389,211 as of January 1 of 2019. So again, the 9th largest city in the state. We continue to show strong growth numbers, especially within the top 10 cities by population. I think the city was second overall in percentage growth. Just a couple of items of note for you as we move through this. There was a recent Supreme Court decision, South Dakota versus Wayfair, you may have heard of. That's going to essentially change the use tax collection requirements for out-of-state and online retailers, meaning that there is now an obligation for the majority of those online and out-of-state retailers to remit to the state and then ultimately down to local jurisdictions sales and use tax. We're expecting a increase based just solely on that component. And the state's working right now to implement recently passed legislation that provides some guidance for the state agency that oversees sales and use tax collection as far as implementing this decision. You may have seen Governor Newsom's proposed budget that came out in January. The governor's budget, with some revenue estimates and programs that he is proposing, assumes continued economic expansion, with a note that in modern time this is the longest economic expansion in the state's history at about 10 years, coming up on 10 years. We do anticipate some additional funding for homelessness, much like you saw in the current year, thanks in part due to the big city mayors, including Mayor Go. We do anticipate this package is going to include some additional funding. The amounts and distribution methods are still being determined, but we do expect that. Earlier this year, you took an action to take that part of that first quarter allocation of the public safety and vital services measure revenues that was realized in this current fiscal year and put that into reserves, in part to put in place a new payment method for the upcoming fiscal year for a component of the city's payment to CalPERS. And in doing so, that's going to reduce payments to CalPERS next year by $800,000. Those payments were due one way or another to CalPERS by changing the method in which the city makes those payments. Again, it reduces the taxpayer obligation by about $800,000. It's going to cumulatively save the city and taxpayers close to $9 million over seven years. That money is replenished throughout the fiscal year, meaning that it was not a one-time infusion that needs to be done on a reoccurring basis, if that makes sense. That money will remain in that reserve each year. I do have a note here that the Citizens Oversight Committee, through their discussion, did recommend that the council consider developing a plan to increase general fund reserves, to establish a 60-day reserve, I think, which is about $34 million in today's, looking at today's general fund, within the next 3 years. And so that is an item of note that we wanted to make you all aware of as part of that discussion that occurred over 4 meetings with the Oversight Committee. Just a couple other items to note before I turn it back over to Mr. Tandy. Refuse rates, staff is proposing a 3.2% increase in refuse rates, generally due to contractual obligations with the private haulers that operate about 50% of the city's refuse routes. There's contractual increases that are built into agreements with them, generally coinciding with the consumer price index. So that is reflected there. There will be a public hearing before you on June 5th, and the required Proposition 218 notices have been issued to those that are affected. Sewer and domestic water rates, not proposing any rate increases on that end. Again, as you recall, there was an action by the council that previously rescinded rate increases that would have been effective July 1, 2019. If not for the settlement in the TCP case. So there are no rate increases at this point for domestic water. A couple other items of note. Long-standing contribution to the Bakersfield Symphony remains in the budget. Also, the Beal Park Band is part of that. Council contingency, this item has been in the last several years at around the $25,000 range, and we tend to look at this item when the council is considering items that may not be funded in the budget or something that comes up in mid-year that is of council interest. And so this year we were able to increase that to $100,000 based upon the circumstances. And we always like to highlight that we are continuing to fund the low-cost spay and neuter voucher program for the Animal Care Center and the Animal Control Division. That program continues to be very successful and is one of several ways the police department and community partners are working towards reducing unwanted or unnecessarily birthed pet population. So with that, the next section has to do specifically with the public safety and vital services measure and the allocations that are recommended for next fiscal year. And at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Tandy.
I utilize executive privilege to take the fun part. I want to clarify that in the ballot measure and to a variety of citizen groups after the ballot measure, the city promised that we would develop a budget where you could see exactly what was being spent for all of the public safety and vital services measure dollars, but that that would show in our budget, as well as the integration of that with the composite and balance of the budget. So in your budget book, between pages 52 and 66, you will find the public services and vital services measure documents and expenditures. Our budget is in a slightly different format than the versions that went to the Oversight Committee, but the dollar amounts are all the same. The tax began to be collected April 1st of 2019. We are projecting $58 million in revenue for the year. And again, the Oversight Committee reviewed staff proposals at 4 meetings from February to March of 2019 and recommended 93% of the dollars contained in the proposals. The recommendations contain the need to add 100 sworn police officers over the first 3 years, the need to add fire positions and staffing to maintain and assure the continuation of our Insurance Service Office Class 2 rating. Again, the reestablishment of an economic development team. There's over $11 million proposed for homelessness efforts. This is unprecedented in the city's history and is a product of the many calls and emails and notations you ask us for service on every day, and the growing concern of the public with that issue. And it's a very complex issue and not one that's easy to solve. So it involves a variety of community partnerships in order to address it. But our contribution is quite significant. We're proposing to create 2 emergency response teams. One regarding litter debris dumping, such as homelessness camps. The other for park-related problems, vandalism, again, litter debris dumping. These will be mobile teams, and they will be connected to our mobile app. So you can take a photo, a geocoded photo, and send it, and it will be dispatched to a center that will immediately ship that scheduled activity onto a schedule and dispatch it to the mobile units. This is modeled after our graffiti efforts the last 10 or 12 years. It will run 7 days a week, and we hope to keep the city looking clean and spiffy and up to date as a result of this. It will also not simply be a cleanup service. The people who staff, particularly the one unit, will be skilled code enforcement officers who have training in dealing with the homeless and in homeless referrals, and who will know where they can be referred to get appropriate services. In a minute, I'm going to talk about a bridge housing project, which will work in conjunction with that rapid response team, because it will be a place where when we displace them from one location, they'll be encouraged to go. It is a low barrier unit, so people who currently aren't eligible for the mission or the homeless shelter can get in and be exposed to treatment opportunities, health-related concerns, and so on. This as opposed to what has been the practice of chasing them out of the river, and then they go into 5 parks and downtown businesses, entryways, and so on, and we chase them out of there. We're hoping to break that cycle and have a better disposition along with community partners who have more skills in the highly complex area of chemical dependency and mental health and related. The city has been lacking much of its urban forest since the drought, and over the years, without having adequate general fund monies, a great many of the shrubs and plants along the street rights of way and in the parks have disappeared. We have a major effort, nearly $2 million, to restore those and bring the appearance of the city up to snuff. We have community facility enhancements proposed at Mesa Marin and at the Tarina Homes at Mesa Marin at the Kaiser Permanente Sports Village. And in cumulative total is 126 new positions to the city staff over the year for the measures complement. There are 13 priorities that were identified as a product of the polling of the 35 outreach efforts that were made. They were built into the ballot issue and authorized by City Council. And all public safety and vital services measure projects fit under one or more of these categories. The first 7 are all police related. The 8th is the fire department enhancement and maintaining the Class 2. The next one is the homelessness issue, addressing fiscal stability of the city, which Mr. Hewitt talked about with our $12 million increase in reserves and plan to enhance that in the future. Creating jobs through economic development, business retention, attraction, and workforce development, and enhancing amenities in the community to improve quality of life and attract visitors, enhancing neighborhoods through additional code enforcement and improved park maintenance. All of these 13 areas are going to be better as a result of Measure N and the efforts that this budget document outlays. Again, 100 police officers. In order to do that, of course, we had to build a new training facility because the old buildings used didn't take enough officers to get us to that threshold, so we're actively engaged in that every day. We also have contained in this budget enhancement to the firearms training facility because of age and being outdated and the same kind of capacity issue. This year, we intend to add 43 sworn and 25 civilian support personnel. While it takes a long time to train the sworn officers, and they won't be on the street for this fiscal year, many of the civilian support personnel will free up police service technicians and others to do more field work so that burglaries get responded to by a police service tech who is a trained investigator and who wears a badge and who gives people a better feeling about us taking their burglary seriously. And so some of those things will occur quite promptly into the year, as many of them as possible, as we go through the lengthy training process for the sworn. We're going to have enhanced response times to property crimes, burglaries, quality of life type calls. This budget contains body-worn cameras for all police department personnel. And again, the major facility upgrades that I mentioned, including $17 million necessary enhancement to the radio system, which is no longer supported by the manufacturer and has to be replaced in cooperation with efforts of Kern County. 11 new fire department staff, and that will help us secure the Class 2 rating. We have serious need for enhanced arson investigation, and this budget contains modernization of multiple fire stations, the roofs, the parking lots, the structures themselves, and again will help maintain that Class 2 rating. I'm excited to reestablish an economic development team. The city did very good things with the redevelopment agency. And you know, the Padre, the Marriott Hotel, the Arena, Chester Avenue and Q Street streetscapes, many community amenities came out of that, and then the state killed it. So now we're proposing to recreate that with local money through Measure N, to hire the staff, to gear up, to better market the community, to attract business, to enhance our flow in exchanging documents with the business community so that that's expedited through paperless permitting. Again, homelessness, the 7-day-a-week rapid response team, the bridge housing I mentioned, $5 million for longer-term housing, such as the homeless shelter and or mission, and an expansion in the significant expansion in the number of beds available in the community for the homeless. And allocations for frontline service providers to help the areas where the city doesn't have a skill set. Again, we need people with medical, mental health, chemical dependency, and related training to staff these facilities and to make them fully functional. And we don't have enough money to hire them all. They're going to have to do some on their own, but we have some money to facilitate that hiring and the enhanced services. The Recreation and Parks Department. The rapid response team there will allow the Parks Department to keep the regional crews on regional tasks. Currently, they get pulled off and the schedule of mowing and trimming and weed spraying and all that disrupted. And with these rapid response teams, they will be able to stay on task, stay on schedule, not get pulled off because the rapid response team will be taking care of it. The regional sports facilities. We have, go out to the Kaiser Permanente Sports Village or Torina Homes at Mesa Marin or Era Park or any of our sports facilities, and you'll see thousands upon thousands of young people and adults getting healthier, exercising, having positive family activity. You'll also see massive numbers of tournaments and customers brought in conjunction with those facilities and Visit Bakersfield. That helps the economic conditions in the city of Bakersfield. Councilmember Weir is fond of telling me, and I'm sure he's going to tell you when he returns, that the primary driver in his ward as far as enhancing people's comfort and increasing the housing sales and so on is in fact the improvements at Mesa Marin. There's a first regional shopping facility going in out there and under construction as we speak. And he would like to see more of that. And it is a regional park like the Sports Village with about 6 or 7 phases on build out. And those facilities make Bakersfield a comfortable family place with a healthier population. Rabobank Arena Theater and Convention Center. A few of us were here when it opened in 1998, and it's 21 years old. And It needs some fundamental facelift and some enhancements after 21 years in terms of the dasher boards and glass for the hockey team, in terms of some paint, in terms of modernization of the lighting structure. The theatrical lights in the theater are getting to the age where we can't even buy replacement bulbs anymore. Those need to be converted to modern technology and upgraded, and that facility, which has over 600,000 visitors a year, given a significant facelift, along with the convention center and better seating at the amphitheater. Public Works Department is proposing the next major phase of lighting conversion over to more energy efficient modes. This one primarily for the parks and decorative lighting on streetscapes around town. Since last year, we accomplished pretty much all of the regular street lights. In order to hire 126 people, to equip 100 police officers, and do all of the other things necessary, support personnel are necessary in technology services, human resources, and public works, in order to provide the background and the assistance that enable those frontline people to do their work. And so there are some expenses along that line. And is it Nelson up next? Chris is coming back, and then Nelson.
Try to move through this not quickly, but expeditiously. So the total allocations for next fiscal year, broken down by department, is $56.7 million. This gives you a dollar amount for each department, combining operating and capital proposed expenditures. So you'll notice, and we'll go through each one. Again, $20.3 million for the police department. Again, development services at 14.7, which includes economic development and homelessness, and you see the others, they're listed. This shows the allocation by percentage. Again, the police department showing the largest share, with the development services department actually showing the second largest share, again, creating a new division and creating some substantial, if I can speak, programs to address the homelessness issue, as well as Recreation and Parks Department at 21%. You see the other departments there. Broken down by expense category, you're going to see a small percentage right now in salary and benefits, operating costs, the day-to-day type cost at 7%, and then what we're calling our capital and major programs at 71%. This will shift over time as more police officers and staff are hired in some of these areas over the course of 3 years or so. So we do anticipate the salary and benefits and operating costs taking up larger percentages, but again, this first year is very capital heavy. Regarding staffing, this gives you a breakdown by department of where the 126 staff are proposed. I do have an asterisk down there by the Human Resources Division to note that in the current year, during, I believe, the mid-year budget update, this council approved 2 positions in the Human Resources Department to get started early, essentially, in preparation for the hiring that's expected to come after July 1. But we wanted to be transparent as such in showing that there will be 3 positions that are proposed to be funded through the measure in the Human Resources Division going into next year. So that's how we're going to total up to 126. Really has to do with the number of positions that are being proposed to be funded through the measure next year. Again, looking at those new positions by department, overwhelmingly a majority is police, with development services, again, creating that new division, coming in second at 13% and then down from there. A note, because this was an important discussion, I think, during the community outreach component of this, as well as a run-up to this discussion, was you're hiring new staff. There's going to be a significant amount of money that's going to be shifted to retirement, or on the extreme that all this money is going to be utilized for retirement costs. Out of the allocations for next year, we're estimating about 6% of the total allocations going to retirement costs associated with those new positions. Every new full-time position the city hires has a component that is related to retirement costs. As a reminder, those costs are now slightly less based upon some reform at the state level that took place in 2013, comparatively to classic members, as they call them. And then again, the city is taking action as part of this proposal to reduce overall cost pension payments going into next year with the increase in the reserves. A little bit about the capital projects. I'll try to get through these quickly. The police department, again, next fiscal year, looking at about $9.9 million. That is mainly the modernized digital radio system, the first phase at $9 million. That is in partnership with Kern County. We're not working in a silo. We understand that there are efficiencies, both operationally and fiscally, by partnering with the county to develop a digital radio system that covers the region. So that is ongoing, and we anticipate that process moving forward as soon as the new budget year starts formally. Looking at upgrading the firearms training facility, I believe that facility over off of Truxton, just west of Oak Street, was actually constructed in the late 1940s. It's evolved over time. Obviously, both the surrounding community as well as the facility, there's been some minor improvements and modifications, but in reality, that facility needs to be brought up to modern day standards, especially with the concept of hiring 100 new officers and having 500 or so sworn staff qualifying out there, in addition to regional efforts and trainings that are brought to that facility. So staff is proposing a $900,000 for that project. That's in addition to money that's been appropriated in prior year, total amount to complete that project. And as we mentioned, the work on the training facility was approved by this council and is moving forward. Fire department, about $1 million in capital projects. Again, all these projects go back to the ratings that are provided to get to that Class 2 ISO rating, and that's important again for private insurance rates. The lower that class number is, between the numbers of 1 and 10, the larger impact it has positively on insurance rates. So that Class 2 designation represents the top 1.5% of departments in the nation. So here are several projects that we're looking to include in the proposal under the measure funding to further improve facilities. Fire Station 7 office rehab system that we utilize, a venting system for the vehicles. It's called the Plima vent system, needs to be replaced, as well as some other improvements at these various stations. And I forgot to mention that I'm going to move through these quickly, only that each department will be presenting you in much greater detail these projects as they come up for their presentation over the course of the next 2 months. Development services, $9 million, again aimed at homelessness-related projects, bridge housing, and longer-term housing. Still looking at sites and project scopes as we move those projects forward. The arena, the amphitheater, again, several projects. This picture here shows just one small little section of the convention center floor that's representative of the entire floor. There are large trade shows and events that are held down there, and the floor itself is deteriorating significantly. There are several other projects that will enhance that facility to drive additional business. Staff anticipates additional business that can be derived from upgrading and enhancing the facilities. Recreation and parks, again, there are some various projects that Mr. Tandy mentioned. The picture on the right kind of gives you an idea of some of those areas that you probably see throughout all of your wards where the vegetation and the median and the streetscapes may be missing. It's not staff's intention to do that. It's not what we want to do. It's been the evolution of the drought and then the ability fiscally to put that vegetation back in and maintain it. This program would allocate about $1.5 million to do that citywide. I'm going to get into all funds for the budget, and then Mr. Smith will come up and talk to you about the general fund. So when I'm talking about all funds, we're not talking just about the safety and vital services measure anymore. This is all funds for the city. And that budget this year right now is proposed at $610.9 million. You'll notice in the capital improvement side of things a drop-off. Last year we were at about 208, and this year we're at about 96. I mentioned, and Nick talked a little bit about that earlier, the timing of the TRIP earmarks and grants and when they're budgeted plays a large role in the year-to-year numbers. And so last year was really the last big year for the TRIP program as far as budgeting. As we move forward, there will be some smaller allocations made for the projects, but that's the reason why you see that percentage decrease. In reality, if you look at the operating budget, that's more reflective of the ongoing operations of the city and the ongoing expenditures. So you see a lot of that $75 million difference is going to be made up of the public safety and vital services measure, about $58 million or so. This gives you an idea of the categories where the city receives its revenue by major category type, or revenue type, excuse me. So again, taxes and assessments reflects the measure, whereas the intergovernmental and enterprise, you'll see the decrease there mainly due to the TRIP earmarks and related funding sources. Again, the flip side of that is where the money is proposed to go in next fiscal year. So you see the same bottom number, the balanced budget, showing that about $167 million is proposed to go to police and fire, and you can see the dollar difference over last year, and again, mainly due to the measure. And again, as we move forward in the presentations by staff and the departments, they'll get into the weeds on what's driving these numbers and the proposals that are contained in their budget.
Before we go on to the next section, can we just take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at about 7 o'clock.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and members of City Council, Nelson Smith is catching a plane out of Los Angeles, and the incoming finance director of the city, who actually doesn't take office until June 14th, but who has been appointed, Randy McKeegan, is going to ably fill in for him. This is a test.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Well, welcome,
He
Randy.
me as he left, and I'm ready to go. So, good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm going to be filling in for Nelson Smith, as Mr. Tandy actually said, and going over some of the general fund revenues specifically. Just bear with me as I have reviewed these maybe once, but I think we can cover it just fine. So the first chart here shows the general fund revenues broken out by function, starting with the last year's actuals, the revised estimates for this year, and the proposed budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Not a lot of changes, except for, of course, property taxes and sales taxes, but those will be covered later. But the other items, other taxes and so forth, there's not a lot of significant changes in those revenue sources based on our estimates for the upcoming year. The most material one probably is the intergovernmental. There are some funds that were received this year related specifically to the HEAP program that aren't showing up in the intergovernmental yet. So we're going to look further at, actually this is the presentation of that chart graphically, showing that the property taxes make up about 30%. And as you can see, we have a significant change with the public services and vital safety, public safety and vital services measure, adding to the sales tax. So sales tax now make up approximately 47% of the budget for the general fund revenue. Now to touch more on property tax revenue, as you can see, this is a chart showing the progress of those revenue sources since 2003. What we see here is that we've estimated about a 3.5% increase in our property tax revenues from the current year. And as you see, there's been some dips during the Great Recession, but we are continuing to show gradual increases at about 3 to 4%. Next chart shows just the current secured taxes. That's a 4% increase from last year. And again, we are continuing to show gradual improvement in those particular sources of revenue. And this is also related to property taxes. This actually shows the various breakouts of property taxes. Again, the bottom blue is the current secured, and the next highest source is the VLF in lieu taxes. And again, showing that property taxes are estimated to be about $85 million in the upcoming fiscal year. And now moving forward, this is just going to be showing the sales tax revenue of the non-PSVS measure funds. So this shows the trends of the revenue in that source. Again, you'll see that we've had a little bit of a roller coaster effect on those revenue sources since 2004, the dips, and then we can continue to increase. Again, we've had another dip in fiscal year 17, but again, we're expecting about a 4% increase in this source of revenue in the upcoming fiscal year. And again, this is that same chart just showing from 2013 and 14, showing that the progress of the sales tax revenue, again, without the PSVS funds included. And again, we're showing it a $75 million estimate for the fiscal year 2019-20. And again, this is the most significant change in our general fund revenues. This is showing our estimates for the public safety and vital services measure funds coming up in the upcoming fiscal year at $58 million. And this is, again, based on historical tracking of the 1% and actual discussions with our property tax consultants and on the estimates of what we can expect in the upcoming fiscal year. So with that, I'm going to, I believe, pass it back to Assistant City Manager Chris Uott.
Okay.
Well done. You're hired.
We'll keep the position in the budget. I'm going to quickly take you through the rest of this. Again, this is a monumental budget for us, so I apologize for the number of slides and the time, but we felt it was important to cover all the different bases. So again, we'll try to get through this expeditiously. This looks at the other side of the coin in the general fund, looking at the expenditure side by department, and you're going to see some significant percentage changes over on the right side. Most all of these are due to the safety and vital services measure, with the exception of some smaller dollar changes that departments will get into for some new positions that staff is proposing that are not related to the measure, which there are some, as well as CalPERS rates, which, as I mentioned, are included in these dollar figures, and we are going to, again, see an increase this upcoming fiscal year due to, again, changes made by CalPERS in Sacramento. You're going to see a really large percentage on that transfers line item, and I just wanted to clarify for you. The way that the accounting works for the public safety and vital services measure is that revenue is received into that fund, we call it Fund 14, and that's the way we're tracking those revenues separately and expenditures separately. The lion's share, that $39.7 million, is an action that we take, and it's routine and normal that we do every year. The dollar amount's not normally that big, but we transfer money from one fund to another. So in this case, this is transferring it technically from the Public Safety and Vital Services Fund to the Public Safety and Vital Services Fund Capital Fund. And that's the way we're able to track both operating and capital expenditures specifically related to the measure. So that's what you're seeing there. It's not abnormal, it's correct, but I just wanted to clarify for you what that is and what that means. So again, broken down in percentages, you're going to see public safety, both in the form of police and fire, receiving cumulatively the largest share of the general fund revenues for the operating budget going into next year, inclusive of the public safety and vital services measure. Again, that transfers number is a little bit larger than in past years. And then you'll see the remainder of the departments that are receiving a portion of that funding. A little bit about the capital improvement program, unrelated to those measure projects that I talked about. We still do have funding for many millions of dollars worth of much needed projects going into next year. Just as a little background, I thought I'd include this slide and talk a little bit about the capital improvement program itself. It's the long-range planning efforts for projects for the city. Staff goes through essentially a 5-year exercise for many departments to look at needs of the departments and of the community 5 years out. It's a planning exercise only. We're only looking at allocating the $1920 through this program, but we do, again, plan out 5 years. And again, just some characteristics of what we look for as far as what a project is considered and the types of projects that you commonly see in the capital improvement program. new facilities, roads, the purchase of land, and the like. Total's $93 million for next year as far as the number of projects that we're proposing. As we talked a little bit about earlier, you're going to see more funding from several different funding sources due to the reduction in cash need for the TRIP program. You're also going to see proposals for public safety, park improvement, and a lot of deferred replacement and maintenance projects. We're also proposing to move $1 million back into the Facility Reserve Fund. This is a fund that's set aside and reserved for things that may come up throughout the year. It's essentially saving for a rainy day for a large project that we're not aware of. And I think we've historically had the reserve fund at $10 million or so. It's come down over the time to 5, and now I think we're less than 3, just because of the circumstances we've been in for the last several years. So this budget does propose to add $1 million back to that reserve fund. Public safety, quickly, we're asking for about $300,000 for a facility study for the police department. This is a long-range, multifaceted study that would be done to look at the new deployment methods the police department is using, as well as with the growth of the department that's expected, and also with the growth of the city, where potentially new substations or other types of facilities may be needed. Outside the vital services measure, we're also looking and requesting a kitchen rehabilitation for Fire Station 3. I believe that's about a 30-year-old kitchen that was originally constructed with essentially residential grade materials. It's used 24/7 by our fire crews and in need of replacement. Recreation and parks, this is not exhaustive, but I wanted to highlight a couple playground rehabilitations in Seasons Park and Tevis Park, as well as a restroom replacement in Beale Park. 2 aquatic facilities are in the proposed plan for some infrastructure replacement, and what I mean by that, it's actually some filters for the pools. It's critical type of equipment for the McMurtry and Jefferson pools to keep those facilities open to the public. Again, on our streets, pedestrian and bicycle improvements, this budget proposes about $30 million in CIP projects for local street, pedestrian, and bicycle improvements, utilizing a variety of different sources, federal, state, and local, and also utilizing more utility surcharge and transportation development fee revenues for local street projects. And again, I highlighted what were essentially, from a dollar standpoint, the top few projects, but there are several more contained within this budget throughout the city. But again, highlights include looking at widening Rosedale Highway from Callaway to Verdugo from 2 to 3 lanes in each direction. Some pavement rehabilitation projects, full-on pavement rehabilitation projects throughout the city, Brundage Lane, Buena Vista Road, South 8th Street. We received a urban greening grant last year from the state of California, and this budget proposes to appropriate those funds and move that project forward to completion. As you all are well aware, we have several curb, gutter, and sidewalk projects funded through the Community Development Block Grant that are proposed throughout the city, and then $6 million in materials money, essentially for various resurfacing projects that come up throughout the year that are prioritized by our Streets Division. When things come up, they're able to utilize this funding to take care of that quickly. Just some other miscellaneous projects of note. We do intend to update the city's website. This is a complete overhaul. We last updated it 5 or 6 years ago. Technology has evolved and changed. The look and the feel is a little bit antiquated now. And so we want to, with the rollout of new services, economic development and otherwise, bring the website up to modern standards. Similarly, we've made some changes to the equipment here in the council chambers. The next step of that is the replacement of the broadcast equipment. If you've ever been in that back room, you will see racks and rows of equipment that ranges anywhere between 20 and 30 years old. It's analog, it's not digital, it's slowly becoming antiquated, outdated, harder to maintain. So there's money that has been collected every year through our equipment rental program that we have internally for this project. And then just a few others. Again, Nick and his staff are going to go through these in detail with you during his presentation when Public Works is up. But there are several sewer lift station rehabilitation projects throughout the city, as well as some significant improvements to the green waste facility that he'll highlight as well. Last section here, before I wrap up, is personnel. We talked a little bit about the measure. I want to talk about kind of the bigger picture now. What we're going to show you is actually a net increase, a net addition of 142 positions throughout the organization. We're saying that there are 126 measure-funded positions, which there are, and those include those 2 HR positions that I talked about, which were added this year. So when you add up 126 and 20 and then take 2 off, you don't get to 142, but it was really we're adding 124 new positions through the measure next year, new slots, and so that's how we got to that number. There again, 20 non-measure positions and 2 deletions of full-time vacant positions due to some needs and assessments and retirements that have been done over this last year. Historical look at staffing. This is the first time since fiscal year 08-09 that we've been equal to, in this case eclipsed, the staffing figures for that year. It's not a one-to-one restoration, so to speak, of the positions that were lost after the recession. It's, again, an innovative new approach at looking at the needs of the community and in correlation with those community priorities, and then the cumulative impact is the 1,681 staff members that are proposed for next fiscal year. These are the non-measure staffing requests by department. Again, each department will bring to you their individual positions and justifications for those. City Manager's Office, 1 position. Visit Bakersfield, 1 position. Risk Management, 1 position. Public Works, looking at 7 throughout various divisions. And then the Recreation and Parks Department is looking at 9 positions. And I think about 8 of those would be field related. Again, trying to bring back up the ranks there that were cut heavily in the last several budget cycles. And then Water Resources, 1 position. We've already shown you this slide. I won't go over it again, but again, that's the 126 positions through the measure. I like to show this slide to give you a history of the employees, city employees per 1,000 residents going back to 1990. It was at 6.2. Last year, it was at 3.94. With the proposals that are contained in this budget, it's back up to 4.32. I will tell you that big picture, if you recall that study that we refer to periodically, we're still obviously in the lower part of the number of employees per residents in the country for cities over 200,000. So this is movement in the positive direction. It is going to have a significant impact on the services that are rendered throughout the community, but I wanted to give you kind of some perspective long-term related to that. Quickly, for the public and for yourself, budget information is available on the city's website. We have our open budget tool now that will be updated come July 1 when this package or a variation of it is approved. You can also go back and look at 5 or 6 years worth of budget history by department, by division, by fund, however you want to sort it. All the information, including this presentation and all future presentations, are going to be available on this website, online on the city's website. So we encourage the public and any interested individuals to go there to get more information. I want to again quickly thank and recognize the budget team. These are the individuals that make up the budget team in the current year. They sit in and for about a period of 3 or 4 months work with all the different departments reviewing the proposals that make up this package that we're bringing to you and ultimately help guide in both projects and operating budgets. And so I really do want to recognize and thank Finance Director Nelson Smith and Assistant City Manager Steve Telia for their contributions for the time that I have been leading the budget team. Their input and contributions have been invaluable to the process, and the budget team will not be the same without them, so I want to recognize and thank them. I also want to recognize and thank all the department heads, business managers, budget managers, all the accountants, everybody that works behind the scenes. This year was a substantial deviation from some past budget years, and I think all of our staff did an excellent job, this being Public Service Appreciation Week. It's apropos that we thank those individuals, and then city staff as a whole really had their fingerprints all over this budget in a very positive way. Here's what's ahead of us as far as the schedule. This is my last slide, I promise. May 8th is today. Obviously, we're kicking off the budget presentation. We've got some noon workshops coming up on May 13th and June 3rd. They're right here in this chambers at 12 o'clock. You'll have different departments coming before you, presenting in detail both their operating and capital budgets, including their safety and vital services measure proposals. June 5th, there is a formal required public hearing. And then I believe June 28th is a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. That's going to be the budget adoption, where the council will consider adopting the budget for next fiscal year. So with that, I am done for the time being. I'm happy to answer any questions, and other staff is here as well. I also encourage you, if there are questions or thoughts, that you contact our office over the course of the next several weeks, so we can begin to shape the budget for next fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hewitt, Mr. Tandy, and staff. Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you. Chris, actually, during the first part of your presentation, you mentioned the number that our population has increased, but you didn't mention kind of a rounded number of our new total. Do you happen to have that?
Yeah, it's a little over 389,000, and so it increased, I believe, just a little bit over 1% year to year, and I think that equated to roughly about 4,200 people. An increase of about 4,200.
Wow, be interesting to know, to remember or to see what the population was, Alan, when you first became city manager.
It was 179,000 in August of 1992.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow, build it and they will come. So it's true. Thank you, Chris. Interesting.
Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chris, and Alan, and Randy. Great to be moving in the right direction, be able to provide the services and quality that the community wants. The $34 million reserve requested by the Oversight Committee, is that going to be built in? You mentioned it, but I didn't know whether or not it was.
Councilmember Smith, it is our intention to do that. Appropriations occur on an annual basis, but we intend to do it by leaving the accrued interest from the now larger fund in the reserve, and through future appropriations that might come at mid-year when we do budget adjustments for mid-year, or in connection with the year-end close, or both. So you will be seeing items coming before you in the identifiable future that move towards that goal.
So I thought I heard 3 years. Is that kind of the goal, to get there in 3 years, or longer the way you see it, or?
Councilmember Smith, and we can get you a little bit more information, but the Finance Department researched best practices and standards from the nationwide, and I believe that level and those dollar amounts coincide with recommended standards for governments. So that's the target, and that'll be a moving target to a certain extent, but I think, as Mr. Tandy mentioned, the intent is to get there over time for those unforeseen circumstances and other needs.
Okay.
If I could just amplify a bit, the facility replacement reserve, which is separate, and Chris mentioned it, it is used for general fund capital needs. In the enterprise funds, we have depreciation accounts. We provide for those needs in that way. In the general fund, for fire stations, police stations, general city buildings and the like, we use the facility replacement reserve. We will also be proposing to council in future years rebuilding that ultimately to about $10 million.
Right, so other types of reserves. Thank you. The seating at the amphitheater, what exactly is that?
Councilmember Smith, it is to go to the best available stadium-type seating for the lower 1,500 seats in the seating bowl. Currently, the lower-level seats are on folding chairs, which are rented at about a cost of $1,500, and then manually taken up and down and tied together with plastic ties. It's inefficient, they're very small, and they're very uncomfortable, and then that's about $750. And then above that, we have what the green bench seats. Well, the green bench seats are not popular because they are just tough on your...
Not very comfortable.
Yeah, they're just not, they're not comfortable at all, and so we want to have a good 1,500 seats in there that are comfortable. The wider stadium seats that we can find and exist, that don't require setup and tear down and rental, and to enhance customer comfort and customer attendance at the facility.
Great, thank you. My only other comment would be, you showed in your city manager's office picking up one position. Is that the public information office that you had mentioned?
It is. That action is actually coming before you at the next meeting, but obviously had to be reflected because we want to get started before the beginning of next fiscal year, since we're trying to make the public cognizant of all of the positive things that we're doing. But we had to reflect it in the upcoming budget as a staff addition, so yes, it is.
Right, I appreciate that. I personally feel, and you know, it's your department, but I think the city manager's office could use additional people on top of that. As you say, demand for services continues to grow, and the communication between council and all of staff is between the city manager's office, and I would like for that to be expanded if possible. Thank you.
Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. A few comments. The first, which isn't really a question, it's just a comment. I noticed, I went to most of the Vital Services Committee meetings, especially the very long one, and my impression was the reason that they didn't recommend, I think, with some of the Rabobank improvements, some of the facility improvements, was they didn't like the presentation. It wasn't all that well done. However, and I think we'll do better in the future in that. But I know I find it hard to believe we wouldn't want to upgrade an old facility like that. It's sort of the premier venue in the entire city. More people see that from out of town than anything. It leaves an impression of Bakersfield. So if they agreed with us 93%, that's pretty good. That's an A-, maybe not an A+, but the only area that I remember was they really were unimpressed with the presentation of the kind of returns, and we need to do a little better in the future in the presentation of those people. So just a comment there. I also would like to have a little more exploration on the reserve fund. You know, I've been personally arguing for a 6-month reserve fund, only because that's what I was taught growing up, and all the businesses I ran, that anything less was reckless. And the next big downturn that hits, 60 days is not going to make it. We're going to send the city into crisis again. I think it's kind of irresponsible. So I'd like to know best practices. I want to be in the top quartile, not the bottom quartile or average. I want to be in the top quartile. At least you could come and tell us the 4 quartiles of months of savings. If your general fund's 260 million or whatever, you know, six months is 130, okay? Well, 2 months, when we have about 1 month now, to go to 2 months, then it takes us 3 years to get there. I talked to Mr. Tan. I don't think any of us agree that we want to wait 3 years before we have 2 months savings in the bank. I think that's just not wise. So I can understand it may take a number of years. It might take us 5 years to build up a 6-month reserve. And if I'm wrong on the 6-month reserve, come back and tell me what the best practices for the best cities are that they, you know, that I'm wrong. But I can't imagine that low of savings, you know, honoring our fiscal stability and protecting the services of the city. I just don't want to see us have to go into the big cuts again and undo all the good work that we've done and go into deferred maintenance again, because we will have another downturn. Our economy goes in cycles. We're going to have a downturn. I want to be ready next time. Another item, we talk about reestablishing a economic development department. And what I'd hope that we could see is that the new department is focused on projects that are specific to the city that benefit the city, like Rabobank, like the Marriott, some downtown redevelopment, but things that are specific to Bakersfield. I've been reading the Western Cities magazine, the things that may replace redevelopment and tax increment, focusing on ways to raise money, but they're more concrete project for the city, and I would hope we could partner with the KDC for services they're already staffed and up to speed, have all the people, the knowledge on recruitment and showing companies around, and not do a duplicative effort on those things. Partner with them on those things and focus our money on the specific projects that have a real bang for the buck within the city that take a lot of focus. We have to raise outside funds, new bonds. I think there are all sorts of new things that may replace the old redevelopment agencies, but that sort of an approach so we can leverage off what the KDC does well and focus our efforts on other things. So I'd like us to at least explore that approach to, be efficient. I'd really hope that it's somewhere along the way we can find some funds. This kind of relates to the image of our city and the branding. Maybe it's within the replacing trees and stuff, but I do think we need to start replacing the blacktop medians on the major boulevards of our city that make us just look worse than horrible. Ming Avenue is a blacktop. I think New Stein, Truxton Avenue, our best boulevards look like we're really the poorest city in the United States. So if we can find a way to put some hardscape landscape in those blacktopped areas, that would just be great. Finally, they say a small item, I brought it up in the past, but we're going to do a police academy. I'm going to hire a number, 100 police officers, and I know everybody here tries to be so tight and efficient on their budgets, but when we do to the facility, I'm repeating myself, I know, I sure hope we can put a professional elevation on this building that makes us look like a first-class police academy and not an old used restaurant. A few dollars, because image does make a difference in how everybody feels about our city, and I don't think it costs that much, but we need to look professional. And I think everybody in town ought to go drive by that thing and be proud when they see it, not go, oh my God, they ran out of money. So if we can do that, that would be a great thing for our city. And those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to give a big shout out to city staff and in particular the city manager and Assistant City Manager Huot for all your hard work on this proposed budget and presentation. I really appreciate all the work throughout Measure N and its implementation. A few items. Councilmember Smith made a comment regarding the city manager's staff and the current levels and growing that. I would strongly second that idea. We are growing our budget by 20%. We're adding 150 employees. It seems prudent for us to grow the city manager's staff to support that. And so thank you, Councilmember Smith, for bringing that to the table. We heard from Mr. Huot in the beginning of the presentation regarding one of the positive factors was the reallocation of local road dollars. And I wonder if there was a plan to invest some of those additional or now freed up road dollars into curb, gutters, sidewalks, road repairs to supplement those dollars that we're investing with those CDBG dollars that we're investing in some of our more historic neighborhoods.
Councilmember Gonzalez, there is, but this is kind of a transition year. We had hoped not to have significant allocation for TRIP to be done with it, but we had to do some supplementing of cost escalation that occurred toward the end of the program and some of the bids and some properties that had to be acquired. So this year, the new monies will go to collector and arterial streets to enhance residential streets. Next year, we hope to get back into the neighborhoods with some of the additional $10 million that will be freed up for that very purpose. You know, you've looked at the map as we have, and as Councilmember Rivera, since your two wards are primarily those that the streets were never built properly in the first place. And, you know, we've been plugging away with $1 to $3 million a year, and it's going to take 30 more years at that rate. We agree that the level of activity has to be stepped up.
Great, thank you. A while back, we had discussed the possibility of establishing a Section 115 trust fund to help us manage future pension obligations, and I wondered what we might do this fiscal year with regards to that.
Councilmember Gonzalez, I think it still merits some level of consideration and exploration. We wanted to put the first thrust at the combined effort of building the general fund reserves, which allowed us to make the payment change to PERS to reduce PERS costs for the next 7 years. But I think that program does have merit and should be put on the table in the future for consideration. All of us are a little bit sensitive, I think, to the emotionalism that CalPERS as a word creates.
Sure.
And we found, I think, in the aftermath of the initial reaction to the reserve increase, that with painstaking education, you can get past the emotion and get people to understand what you're really doing. And I think we would have to do a good deal of education on that one.
I understand. And it's our job to get past the emotions of it and to do the right thing for the future of the city. And so I'd encourage us to continue to look into that. And then I'd like to echo Councilmember Freeman's point regarding the street medians, the landscaping strips, and adding to our tree canopy in our city. I think it's an important investment. I think it speaks to the quality of life, and it shows outsiders, visitors to our community, who we are as a community. And so I'm encouraged that we're enhancing the tree canopy, but I'd also like us to explore a more modern design, more contemporary design of that landscaping as it relates to the landscaping strips and other trees throughout the city. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to thank the citizens of Bakersfield again for their support of Measure N. Years gone by, when sat through budget presentations, it was always just, you know, get us through to another year. It was, you know, sometimes robbing Peter to pay Paul to make things work. And staff has done just an incredible job during those years to ensure we, you know, provided vital services. But now with Measure N, we're able to do proactive things that we've never been able to do. And we're going to be a changed city probably in the next 5 years. Hopefully sooner than that, but I would say 5 years from now, it's really going to be a different place. Again, I want to thank City Manager's Office and the whole team, and again, the community for their support for their own city. Kind of in line with what Bruce was saying, and Andre too, not so much the street mediums, even though I totally agree with that, but there are literally millions of people that go through Bakersfield and never leave the freeway. I know that the freeways are Caltrans' responsibilities, and trip withstanding and the construction that's currently going on, those areas, in some areas, look pretty bad. They look pretty full of blight and trash, different things. And I don't know how much effort it would take or how much money it would take, but if we were able to subsidize something, at least on important ramps, so trees could be trimmed, weeds could be mitigated, palm fronds could be picked up, and maybe even another crew, a trash crew, put on through our homeless collaborative. I think it would greatly help the impression of our city so people take a chance and get off at a ramp and visit our great city and see all the great amenities within it. Thank you.
Whether we talk to somebody in Ward 6 or Ward 1, quality of life is important to them. It's the quality of life for their family. So I just want to reinforce what my colleagues have said about economic development and the concept of image and the concept of making our community look the way that all people would be proud of. And whether it's in Ward 7, Ward 5, what do we do to increase that image, that quality of life where people are feeling that we really are caring for all parts of our community, and that in all parts of our community we can see some degree of improvement. So as Councilmember Gonzalez has said, with tree planting, whatever it is, so every part of the city is feeling like we care about every part and we're making a difference. This is a time when we've had the privilege of getting more money, and so being able to see the investment shared among all people, I think, would be very important. We have hired a consultant for branding, and I'm curious, what kind of allocation do we have for the next phase of what we might be doing and taking it forward once the branding is announced?
Mayor, it will kind of led by the business community with chamber support. I don't want to get ahead of their announcements and so on, but I think it's safe to say that they're getting near public program and unveiling of the work that's been done, which will then attempt to be disseminated out throughout the community and the business community. The city itself will have, presumably, stationery and letterhead and business cards and entry to the city sign changes and many things of that kind which have not been fully costed out. We're inventorying them now so that we can do that. But it is hoped that the business community will pick up elements of it, and that city, county, KDC, Visit Bakersfield, will all have commonality to some elements of the branding and the logo, and that would be a very good thing for Bakersfield and Kern County. So the costs will come later. The work is progressing, and I think it's going to be appreciated and liked when it comes out.
Thank you. You know, I sense a new optimism in our community, and whatever we can do to capture that. We talk about writing a new narrative, and I think this is part of writing that new narrative and getting the word out, so thank you for your efforts on that. You mentioned 93% of the proposal was approved by the Oversight Committee. Would you be able to just talk about those items that they maybe had a differing view on? I know we already mentioned something in terms of Rabobank.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, yeah, the discussion related to Rabobank, and Councilmember Freeman provided his kind of input and view on that, but that was one item that the Oversight Committee did not recommend. There was another item, and now I am...
It's the Kaiser Permanente Sports Village, which was in between phases 3 and 4 and was to be in a revision of the master plan and design of phase 4 phase. And so there's $1.5 million contained in the budget for that. They also didn't vote for that. That is part of the reason I mentioned earlier in the evening the progress that's been made on getting a $3 million state grant to match our money, which would include that $1.5 million and some additional. Because that will allow us to convert 4 current football fields to soccer, to build 5 new, and to build and relocate 5 new football fields, because those additions are necessary actually to meet the demands of both the soccer and football community, along with all the restrooms and roads and sewer and water and support facilities that go with it. Those were the two areas. In the minutes to their last meeting, which we have sent you, and we'd be happy to send you again if you like, they asked for their narrative comments to be included, and we did that. Councilmember Freeman, I think, said it best. How does the premier facility in town that draws most people and most people from out of town, how can you neglect it after 21 years? So I'll let those words speak for themselves, but they are all contained in the proposed budget from staff.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your hard work, staff. This does not come easily to create a document of this magnitude. Vice Mayor?
Motion to receive and file.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved with Councilmember Rivera and Councilmember Weir absent.
Thank you. Councilmember Sullivan, did you punch in for a comment, or were you voting and accidentally hit that?
Karen, thank you, Mayor. Something very, very brief. Chris, while we're talking about street improvements and median improvements, it reminded me that I have been intending for some time to mention that, to me, it is a safety issue where we need to repaint the end of the medians, and maybe, hopefully I'm describing what I'm talking about, but on many of them, there are the reflective paintings, and on many, that's completely gone. And with my generation of eyes, I depend upon that. At night, I need that reflective, and I need those medians, the curbing of the medians to be repainted, because that, otherwise.
Especially at night.
Oh, yeah, at night, because otherwise definitely specifically at night. Otherwise, you can't see where to turn in, you can't see where to make a U-turn. And about 6 months ago, I was out in the northwest part of town, which is completely unfamiliar to me, and I was trying to, a huge, wide intersection, I was trying to make a U-turn. I was scared, I was afraid, because I could not see where to turn. So that's really very important. That needs to be redone. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Next item, please.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to announce that the first item under appointments, number 7A, appointment of a new member to the Bakersfield Public Safety Vital City Services Measure Citizens Oversight Committee, is being removed at the request of staff. This item will be pulled from the agenda and placed on the May 22nd, 2019 agenda, when it is expected that a full complement of the City Council will be present.
Thank you. And the next item.
One appointment, Ward 7, to the Planning Commission due to the expiration of term of Patrick Wade. Term expired April 30th, 2019. We have received 2 applications, one from Patrick Wade and one from Neela Hogan.
Thank you. This appointment is by ward, therefore no ballots are required. So, Councilmember Vice Mayor Parlier,
I
your
move the
recommendation.
nomination of Patrick Wade.
You have a motion. Please cast your votes.
Motion was approved with Council Members Rivera and Weir absent.
Thank you. And now next item.
Consent calendar items 8A through 8AU for approval. We received correspondence regarding item 8AR from Jim Lisner, James Walker, and James Farley.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Does any council member wish to recuse themselves from an item? Does any council member wish to remove an item for separate consideration? I make a motion to approve consent calendar items 8A through 8AU along with the noted agenda corrections by the city clerk.
You have a motion, please cast your votes.
Motion was approved with Councilmember Rivera and Weir absent.
Thank you. Our next item is a public hearing. Before I open the public hearings, I'll go over the presentation policy. Each side will be allowed 15 minutes. It's 15 minutes for all speakers, so it's important that you identify yourself and make your statement quickly so others may speak. We'll hear statements from those opposed to staff's recommendation, and then we'll hear from those who speak in favor of the recommendation. If there's testimony on both sides, each side will be allowed a 5-minute rebuttal. There's a clock on the 2 TV screens behind me which indicates 15 minutes. Please step to the microphone, identify yourself. After 14 minutes, a yellow light will come on. At the end of 15 minutes, a red light will come on, indicating your time's up, and please quickly end your statement at that point. You may ask questions during your statement, but they won't be answered until the public hearing is closed. If you have written comments that are longer than your verbal statement, please give those to the clerk, and she'll provide copies to the council. Please be courteous to all who wish to speak. Unless there's approval by the majority of the city council, a strict 15-minute time limit will be the norm for all of that session. So please be concise, avoid repeating yourself. And now, Madam Clerk, please read the public hearing item.
Public hearing to consider a resolution ordering the vacation of 811 square feet of road right-of-way on the east side of D Street adjacent to 2031 19th Street.
Thank you. Mr. Fidler?
Honorable Mayor, council members, the Women's Club of Bakersfield desires to construct a new parking lot on the corner of 19th and D Street. In order to facilitate this new parking lot, the Women's Club has requested to vacate the 811 square feet along the east side of D Street so that they can accommodate additional parking and landscaping along that alignment. Staff has requested feedback from both or all the utility companies and several different departments within the city, and all of them have responded with no conflicts to this request. So at this time, staff is recommending approval of this resolution. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fidler. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. How many people would like to speak in opposition to staff's recommendation? Seeing none, how many people would like to speak in support of staff's recommendation? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and return it to council for comment and action. I see no requests to speak, so Vice Mayor?
Motion to adopt resolution.
You have a motion, please cast your votes.
Motion was approved with Council Members Rivera and Weir absent.
Thank you. Councilmember Sullivan, did you intend to press your button?
Oh, goodness, I'm still having a problem with that. I just wanted to say I'm delighted that this is being figured out, because the Women's Club is in desperate need of more parking, has been for years, and especially with the apartments, the new apartments going in downtown, the problem will be even more serious. So this is a good thing for downtown and certainly for the Women's Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Council and Mayor statements.
Colleagues? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if everyone has had a chance to look through this new Western City magazine, but I actually read these things and they have some pretty good articles once in a while. This one seems to be devoted to economic development and has some great articles on what's being done in other cities. One of them caught my eye because I think it was Riverside, was talking about the same kind of effort we're making for fast tracking, and it talked about you know, the new streamlined Riverside, I think we were going to use the same kind of name, but they already did it. Interesting, they did the software program we've talked about and implemented it. It said facilitate investment by removing obstacles at all levels of the development and review process, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things they did was redesigned planning process allows every project to be reviewed within 2 to 4 weeks, depending on complexity. But these are the kinds of things we've been talking about. It might be worthwhile contacting them to see how it went. You know, what have they done? What worked, what didn't? But it seems like they went through the process we're embarking on here, and maybe there's some valuable lessons just talking to somebody down there. But I also was learning, and maybe staff already knows all these things, all the things that are sort of proposed to start replacing what redevelopment agencies used to do in new ways of tax instrument financing. There's a whole laundry list. I just thought it was really worth, you know, reading and informing ourselves on. So just a suggestion. And one other comment is the gentleman who came down spoke about the recycling. I know Councilman Rivera wasn't here tonight, but if someone in staff could make sure that he knows they have a problem and at least that it gets addressed. I don't know what the solution is, but I would like to think that we're a city that does everything we can to solve a problem, and maybe there's something that can be done. Maybe it's more complex than I think, but at least we should reach out and let people know we're trying to solve these problems. They're trying to run a business. They've created some jobs. If there's any way to figure out a way to make this work better, we ought to give it a try. Thanks.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier, when we were talking about Centennial Corridor and TRIP, I was remiss in not mentioning the City Attorney's Office. Jenny, you and your staff have been integral in supporting the projects through, you know, various litigations that have faced the city, and you and your team and our contractors have just done an excellent job. I just want to thank you for that.
Don't see any other requests. I had the opportunity about 2 weeks ago to represent us in Sacramento. It was League of California Cities Legislative Action Day and our board meeting. I want to thank Mr. Talia and Ms. Kitchen for preparing me. I had the opportunity to speak up for our city numerous times. We are not San Francisco and we're not Los Angeles. There's a lot of legislation that is being floated out there that would put us in a significant disadvantage. We are not like them. And so I'm just grateful for the information that you were able to provide. I was very strong in my comments, and finally the maker of the motion said, we're going to give Karen what she wants. I acknowledge that our northern neighbors have different viewpoints, but that we really are different, and got to speak a little bit about some of the differences that you provided. But thank you very much, and I want to keep doing that on our behalf and make sure that our city is represented. We're the 9th largest, hopefully going to be the 8th largest fairly soon, and we want to make sure that the people in Sacramento get to hear our voice represented. But thank you for helping me get prepared. And seeing no other requests to speak, we are adjourned at 7:58.